Okay, Christina, I think we're recording, and I am ready to go if you are, if you want to kick us off.
That sounds good to me. Hi, everybody. I'm really, really excited for today's webinar and excited to have all of you with us today. And just so you know, Stephen, we are looking at some climbing heat today. So hopefully this lunch and learn is going to be everyone's, little escape from that heat this afternoon.
Yeah.
Yes, and so we're very excited to have you here. For those who don't know, I'm sure we'll get into this, but Stephen Shattuck is Bloomerang's Chief Engagement Officer, and he will be giving us the lowdown today on how nonprofits can unlock the hidden power of donor surveys. But before we get to that, I'd like to give a quick shout out to the whole team over at Bloomerang, who's always incredibly thoughtful, responsive, professional, and not to mention fun to work with. We've had them at our conference for a couple of years, and they're always a good time. And not only that, but they embody so much of what we value here at PANO in terms of breaking out of our silos and figuring out how we can work better together to ultimately accomplish more for our communities, which really, when you get down to it, is our mission here at PANO, to amplify the impact of the work that you guys are all doing out in the field. And all too often, we leave money on the table just because we don't really understand our donors and supporters too well. And one of the many reasons that we love Bloomerang as a partner is not only do they offer a user-friendly donor management and fundraising database, but they also offer education, like today's free webinars, to help nonprofits understand all the tools, resources, and skills needed to maximize the donors that we already have and the donors that we could have. And of course, as you all know, it's a really wonderful thing that webinars like today's are completely free. And on top of that, in case you weren't aware, PANO members do get a 10% discount off Bloomerang services. So for more information about that discount, about PANO membership, or any of our other upcoming trainings, you can always check out our website at pano.org. And on that note, I am excited to turn it back over to Stephen so that we can dig in.
Oh, well, thanks, Christina. That was all really kind of you. I didn't expect to hear all that. That was really nice. And I would just return the favor. We love PANO as well. We love doing these webinars for you and coming to your events. Probably my favorite statewide association. I'm not just saying that, but you guys do it right. You guys do a lot of really good education, and it's always really easy to work with Christina and the team over there. So we love it. So thanks to all of you for hanging out for about 90 minutes or so. I'm sure you're maybe a little busy right now, so I always appreciate you taking the time. If you just started a new fiscal year, congrats. Welcome to 2020. If you're on a calendar year like me, you're halfway there. So you all have something to feel good about. So like Christina said, I work at Bloomerang. I run our education and research over here at Bloomerang. Basically, they pay me to do presentations like this and share data that we collect and lots of really good resources and thought leadership. So we love doing these webinars. I also come from a fundraising family. As you can see there, my wife is a career fundraiser. Even our kids, we're trying to raise the next generation of fundraisers. So rest assured, we're at least trying to keep it going over here. So you are here to learn about donor surveys. So why donor surveys? It seems like, yeah, I know it's just another thing that maybe you're not doing that people are recommending you do. And I don't want to overwhelm you, make you feel bad if you're not doing surveys, or make you feel like, geez, this is a big job. I don't know if we can tackle this right now. We've got so many other things going on. My goal for you today is that at the end you'll think, yeah, that's doable. That's something we can add into our communications toolkit that maybe won't take a ton of time, but one that I really think will pay a lot of dividends for you in the form of increased donor loyalty, increased information about who your supporters are that'll guide your communication efforts, lots of fun benefits to surveying donors. And I think you'll agree at the end that it's not too big of a deal to add that into your communications mix. But why surveying, right? There's a lot of things we could talk about. We could be talking about, lots of different fundraising mechanisms, events. It seems like there's all kinds of things that we can be doing out there. But Surveys are an interesting one because they are really ubiquitous in the for-profit sector. If you have traveled this summer, or maybe if you rented a car or stayed at a hotel, even if you've gone, grocery shopping or bought something online, it seems like we're always getting surveys from these companies that we are utilizing or purchasing from. And maybe it's a little bit annoying. I don't know about you, but I'm getting surveys all the time from people. And it kind of got me wondering, why do so many businesses do these things? What is it that they think they're getting out of these surveys that they're sending out to so many people? And I would kind of compare that to the nonprofit sector, where it's not as common to be surveying donors as common as it is for companies to be surveying their customers. And I'm wondering why. So, I did a little bit of reading about this. I kind of read into why for-profits do these surveys so often. And the main reason is that it really helps them retain the customers that they already have. So they are making sure that their current customers are happy. If they're not happy, they're finding out what those issues are, and they're mitigating those issues, they're solving them. But it really helps them kind of figure out what's going on in their customers' experience that maybe they can improve upon, or maybe even feel good about if they're doing something right. And it seems like there's a real opportunity to do that with our donors as well. I think sometimes that we, actually Christina really nailed it. I really love what she said. I think that we sometimes kind of fail to be curious about our donors, how they feel about us as nonprofits that they support. What makes those donors tick? Why are they giving to us? Why do they care about the causes that they are giving to? Do they even care about the causes that they are giving to? And just as powerful as surveys are at customer retention on the for-profit side, they're also really important for retention on the donor side. And donor retention, I love. Anytime there is some kind of hook to donor retention, it's going to be a topic that I'm going to talk about, that we are going to talk about at Boomerang. So I kind of want to make the case for that up front, why you should care about retaining the donors you already have, in addition to acquiring new donors. And then I'll kind of show you, actually based on a lot of research, how surveying can actually help you do that, how it can help you retain the donors that you already have. But first, the current donor retention situation. And I know if you've attended my webinars before, I always talk about what's currently going on with donor retention. The reason I do that is that I volunteer with a think tank that is studying donor retention on an ongoing basis. Now we're releasing quarterly reports. We used to only release annual reports at FEP, at the Fundraising Effectiveness Project, but now we've got a lot of really up-to-date data coming out on a quarterly basis. So if you're not familiar with FEP, they are this really neat collaboration between AFP and the Urban Institute. And what we do is we study donor retention in the sector every single year, and we release quarterly reports that kind of show how we're doing from quarter to quarter. And the most recent donor retention data that we have, actually this data just came out a few weeks ago. It's really new, so you're seeing some brand new stuff here. If you're listening to the recording, don't worry, you can just go to the afpfep.org website and see the most recent numbers. But right now we're sitting at about a 43% donor retention average, which means we're losing over half of the donors that are giving to us from one year to the next. And that to me is a low number, and everyone at FEP I think would agree, and most people who see these numbers I think are kind of shocked by that in some cases, by how low that number actually is. Almost 6 out of 10 donors do not return to us and give again in the following year. And for first-time donors, it's even lower, 20%. 8 out of 10 first-time donors never make a second gift. Really low on that first-time side. In fact, we're going to spend a lot of time on how to maybe employ surveys on first-time donors specifically, but more on that later. What you can see is the gift frequency increases as you get more and more gifts, and if you can get a monthly commitment from donors, those donor retention rates get really high, 60 to 90%, above 90% on the monthly giving side. So one way you can help improve these numbers is by surveying your donors. It's not the only way. It's not a magic bullet. There's tons of things. You've probably heard about them, read about them, seen them talked about at conferences, stewardship and storytelling and gift acknowledgments. Lots of things can help you improve these rates for your own organization. But surveys is one that is sneaky useful, and actually I think it can be a lot of fun to get going. And I'm going to show you some research that actually backs up why surveying can help retention specifically. But back to the data. This is where we stand right now. This is where we have been over the last 5 years on that new donor retention side. Even scarier, perhaps, than the fact that we're at 20% is that it has been dropping over the last 5 years. So it seems to be getting worse every year. We seem to be getting not as efficient at retaining those first-time donors, getting that second gift. On that repeat donor side, hasn't really changed too much. I guess it's dropped a little bit from 63 to 61%. But it's kind of like that 2% of GDP that fundraising represents. It seems like every single year, hardly ever budges. Those retention rates don't really move too much. So once you've got kind of an ongoing support, you should be in pretty good shape for that retention piece. But maybe the most alarming rate is the recapture rate. So this is the percentage of people who lapse but then come back after lapsing. And you can see it's only 4%. So by and large, if you lose a donor, it is really, really hard to get them to come back once they stop giving. So we're going to talk about ways to maybe survey these groups of donors, specifically lapsed donors, to see if we can help maybe bring them back or maybe find out did we do something wrong? Is there something that we can improve upon in the future to kind of prevent future lapses from other donors? So if you don't care about donor retention, if you're saying, well, it's okay if we lose donors and maybe we can get them back or we can get new donors, it's really, really tough to do that. So if you are focusing on retention, you've got a really good baseline for sustained support. Speaking of sustained support, this is kind of what happens in your database, what happens in your Boomerang or your Donor Perfect or eTapestry, whatever it is you're using, at certain retention rates. And I would draw your attention to kind of the bottom row here, 60% attrition rate, which is a 40% retention rate. If you have a 40% retention rate, you're basically starting over from scratch every 5 years. After 5 years at 40%, you go from 1,000 donors, if that's your starting number, of course, to about 10 donors. So every 5 years, we're basically starting over from scratch if we have at about an average retention rate of 40 to 45%. So if any of you listening in maybe are in charge of major gift fundraising or plan giving, this should really alarm you because your best prospect list only has about 10 donors on it, right? You need these people to be giving for 5 or more years for them to be considered really good major gift or plan giving prospects. I mean, it's pretty rare that you're going to get those kinds of gifts from maybe these people or even these people. But you need sustained support, and this is your pipeline, right? Only 10 donors. I think the retention issue that we have in the sector has a compounding effect on major gifts, plan giving, the clefs, things like that. So if you improve retention, not only are you getting more annual support, but you also have a higher chance of getting those larger gifts maybe at end of life or from people that have been giving for a long period of time. What about dollars raised? I know this is a super busy slide, and you're just starting your day after a long holiday break, but I'll break it down in this way. This is 2 pretend organizations. One has a 41% retention rate, and one has a 51% retention rate. And you can see the differences in dollars raised by just a 10% difference. Doesn't seem like a lot, only 10%. Not a big change there, only 10%. But that one organization that has a higher rate, they're raising almost $500,000 more from those retained donors over that period of time. And one thing that this slide does not illustrate, which might be even a little bit more impactful than those dollars raised, is these people who are giving more and giving longer, that's great. But maybe they're doing other things. Maybe they're volunteering for you. Maybe they are fundraising for you, spreading the word about you, serving on a board or a committee in some case, and higher likelihood that those people are going to write you into their wills or maybe give you a major gift or contribute to maybe a capital campaign through a pledge or something like that. We have research that says that those long-term loyals, people who've been giving for 5 or more years, are the best prospects specifically for bequest. So if you're not doing bequest marketing, one thing you might want to do is maybe just run a report in your database who's been giving for 5 or more years and consider maybe sending a packet to them because they are the best prospects. It's not rich people. It's not people that have been giving high dollar amounts necessarily. It is length of giving, people who have been giving to you over a long period of time, especially if they make multiple gifts within a year. So this retention issue, it really does feed into so many other things, major gift fundraising, bequests, plan giving, all those great things that really mean a lot of money besides just your annual fund. So hopefully you kind of agree with the case for caring about donor retention. I know I kind of zoomed through a lot of research there very quick. We could do a whole day workshop on just those 10 or 12 slides that I went through. But now I kind of want to turn our attention to, okay, we care about retention. Why surveys? How can surveys help us retain those people for 5 or more years, increase the first-time donor retention rate of 20%, and really set us up for some interesting things happening in terms of other giving mechanisms like major gifts and planned gifts. So what is it that donors say that keeps them loyal for 5 or more years with nonprofits? What do nonprofits with higher retention rates, what are they doing well to keep those people into the fold? And again, we have research into this. There's a lot of donor loyalty studies. Penelope Burke does her awesome study every single year. Adrian Sargent has done research on this. I'm going to show you one just for the sake of time, but you'll find if you look at other donor loyalty and donor retention studies, they all pretty much say the same thing. Donors are not super complicated people. They kind of give and keep giving for basically the same reasons and have been doing so for hundreds of years. But I'll show this study because I think it breaks it down into some really digestible, actionable items. So this study is from the Donor Voice. It's a little old. It's from back in 2011. But again, if you look at Penelope Burke's annual donor loyalty research that she puts out through Cygnus Research, I think you'll find that it's basically the same things that are reported every single year. But this is a cool study. It was a cohort of 250 nonprofit organizations here in the States. I think there maybe were some Canadian organizations as well. And they looked through their database and found their most loyal donors, about 1,200 donors that had been giving for an extended amount of time. They had been giving frequent gifts over the years, multiple gifts within a year. These are kind of the cream of the crop loyal donors. And Donor Voice surveyed them to basically say, hey, what are these nonprofits doing well that keeps you giving for such a long period of time? And these were the top 6 reasons that those loyal donors gave for why they keep giving to these charities. Maybe these organizations were doing these things purposefully in spite of themselves. It doesn't really matter, but this is what happened in the relationship that kept them around. And by the way, this slide can inform so much of your communication efforts. It doesn't just speak to surveys. It speaks to thanking, storytelling, stewardship, all those good things. So, read into the slide later on. We're only going to really focus on one of the 6 things, but I think you'll find this one useful even beyond just surveys. So number one thing, probably won't surprise any of you, but the thing that keeps donors loyal the most was that they think you're doing the things that you say you're going to do, right? If you're an animal shelter, you are sheltering animals and you're getting them adopted and you're reporting on those outcomes. The euthanasia rate is dropping, the stray pet population is dropping, and it's all because of you, the donors. You're communicating those things. All of you listening, I know, are effective. You wouldn't be here if you weren't. But you have to go that extra step in communicating that to the donor, telling those stories, right? Those stewardship stories, those impact stories, the kind of thing that we sometimes put in our annual reports, and that's maybe the only time of the year that we tell those stories. You should be telling those stories constantly, just as an aside, because donors love it. They love it when they can read that you're doing awesome things through their gifts. Number 2, This was kind of stands kind of alone compared to the other 6, but the fact that it's the number 2 reason I think bears some attention. Donors don't like to be caught off guard by anything that you are sending them or saying to them. So honoring communication preferences, telling the donor what it is you're going to be sending them, what they can expect from you in the future, and making sure that your appeals and your anything that you send really kind of makes sense for the recipient that is receiving it. Maybe not asking a major gift donor to give you $10 on Giving Tuesday. Conversely, not asking someone who's only given you $20 once to maybe consider you in their estate planning, or maybe ask them to make a 5-figure multi-year pledge. Just kind of making sure you're sending things to people that make sense. Segmenting your communication is kind of a way to break that one down. Number 3, again, shouldn't be surprising. Donors like to be thanked. The speed of the gift acknowledgement specifically has been shown to increase retention. You literally cannot thank donors fast enough, and the faster you thank donors, the better. So, 48 hours, 72 hours if you can. Donors don't like to wait a month, a year to get those thank yous. But now we finally arrived. Number 4, the number 4 reason the donor receives opportunities to make his or her views known. Donors like to be surveyed, right? We have research that shows this. There's lots of other things that allude to this. It's not like the for-profit side where it's kind of annoying. We get tons of these surveys from hotels and things. Donors give to causes that they believe in. They give their hard-earned dollars. Very often they do not receive anything in return. They're giving out of the goodness of their heart. They are invested in a way that they aren't invested on the for-profit side. So it kind of makes sense, at least to me, that they would care more about providing feedback and wanting to have a little bit of a say in what is going on with the organization. So surveying donors, not only will you get some good information back from the people who respond to those surveys, but just asking the question of those donors is going to make them feel good about you as an organization, because you're showing that you care, that they are a stakeholder. And you see this in the rest of the research. In fact, the number 5 thing is that the donor feels like they're part of your cause, not just kind of this like separate funder, this silent ATM off in the corner, but that they feel a part of what's going on with the organization. It's a very personal thing to be giving to a nonprofit, right? So of course they would want to be more vocal and showing how they feel about the cause, about you as an organization, what you're sending them, how you're thanking them. We'll get into all the questions you can ask. And then 6, again, is tied to gift acknowledgement. Again, thanking donors. So even though there's 6 things on this list, there's really only 3 or 4. Thanking donors, doing that storytelling, showing the impact, and then soliciting that feedback is really critical. So we see a lot of, asking, thanking, and reporting. But I would kind of add in a 4th thing that is, maybe surveying or asking for that feedback as part of that process. It's the number 4 reason. It's why we think that surveying, at least at Boomerang, is a really important thing to do. So let's dive into how we can do this, who we should be surveying, what it is we should be asking, and how to make it all happen. So all of you listening, you've probably got a lot of different constituents. The more you sort of break up your surveys into constituency types, the more effective those surveys are going to be. So I would look to the donor retention research as a way of maybe identifying who those recipients should be. I think surveying first-time donors is a really good thing to do. I think if you do nothing else after this presentation in terms of kind of dipping your toes in the water, create first-time donor surveys. And then when people who have been giving for maybe a year or 2 or maybe even longer, hey, let's survey them and see how they are doing in terms of their relationship. And again, lapsed donors, we saw that recapture rate is only 4%, 4 or 5%. Surveying lapsed donors specifically and asking them questions that are specific to that situation. Lots of other people, specific questions to event attendees after an event. that's probably something you're already doing. Hey, what did you think of the event? What kind of feedback would you have? Sometimes if you're using like Eventbrite, they're sending those surveys automatically. When you close this webinar, I think ReadyTalk is going to send you a survey, and maybe even PANO will send you that survey afterwards. So it's kind of a natural thing. Volunteers, I think, are great. How was the experience of being a volunteer? Did you enjoy it? Did we explain what you needed to do well enough? Would you recommend us to your friends and family to become volunteers? And then another sneaky good one, and actually I gave this presentation yesterday to another group, and at the end someone raised their hand and said, well, what about corporate sponsors or corporate supporters or vendors? Should we be surveying them? And I said, yeah, that's a great idea. I'm going to put that in my slide for PANO tomorrow because it's an awesome idea. Sometimes those corporate sponsors go underappreciated a lot of times, and I think there are very specific things that you can ask these people. But the point here is that you're not asking everyone the same exact questions. You're asking new donors questions that you're not asking existing donors, and you're asking lapsed donors questions that you're not asking anyone else. It's just like anything else that we would segment in terms of appeals and acknowledgments. It's personalized for that group of people. Where surveys kind of fall flat is when they're so generic that you're not really getting any useful information because you're sending a generic survey to every type of supporter, and it's kind of hard to get some actionable data back there. So we'll look at different examples of all of these things. Specifically, the first three, I think those represent the lowest of low-hanging fruit, but with some special attention on new donors. Not a great star. I'm sorry about that. I'm pretty good with my pen here, but we'll get new donor surveys as well. So what kinds of things can you ask? Well, there's a few categories. One thing that you can focus on is how well are we doing as a nonprofit? Was it easy to donate today? Was our website easy to navigate? Were you able to donate okay on that online giving form? How are we communicating to you? Are we thanking you well enough? Are we thanking you fast enough? Do you like our newsletter? Do you like the stories we are telling you? And then I think another category is information about the donor, especially on the new donor side. Why did you give? It seems like kind of a novel question to ask, but I think it's a great question to ask a brand new donor. Hey, why are you passionate about ridding the world of Alzheimer's? Why are you passionate about the forests of Pennsylvania? Why do you care about the species of birds that we are trying to save? It's such a natural and powerful question that you can ask new donors that I'm sort of surprised that we don't do this. If somebody gave you a birthday present out of the blue that you didn't know, you would probably want to figure out, why am I getting something from this person that I don't know at all? And we don't know new donors. We don't know why it is they care about the cause. We don't know a lot of times how they discovered us, what prompted that gift today. Those kinds of questions are absolutely great to ask first-time donors, and I'll show you some examples of those going forward. And then for lapsed donors, hey, what went wrong? Did we do something wrong? Did we make you mad? What would it take for you to come back? You have to be really careful here. You have to be very tactful on the lapsed donor side. I'm going to show you a couple examples of some really good lapsed donor surveys that hit the mark and are respectful. So how can you do this? What can they look like? How are they kind of implemented in real-world examples? Charity Water, I know it's kind of annoying. It seems like everybody shows Charity Water examples, so sorry about that. But they do a really good job not only of kind of reporting on the impact of your donation, kind of telling you stories and, what's going on here, what is the impact of the gift, but almost all of their emails kind of end in some kind of survey. We want to hear from you. Help us improve your experience by taking this 3-question survey. So pretty easy to put these in emails. All it takes is maybe creating that survey, creating that link, and then just kind of plopping it in those emails. But I want to show you the actual survey here. In this case, I think it's pretty well put together. So this is a report, an update to a current donor. So this is kind of that repeat donor cohort. So we're not asking questions as much about the donor themselves because they've been giving a while. Maybe we've already found out some of that information. What they do here is kind of audit the experience of the donor. How would you rate the email update that you've gotten, kind of a 1 to 5 scale, very satisfied to very dissatisfied? What was your favorite or least favorite part? And people can kind of just write in their answer. I like this free-form box because it doesn't lock the recipient into any kind of drop-down menu where they have to pick some pre-selected options. It really enables them to write a lot of different kinds of things. And then the net promoter question, how likely are you to donate to charity water again? Very likely to not very likely. So this is a question that you see a lot on the for-profit email surveys. It's usually called a net promoter question. How likely are you to donate? How likely are you to buy again? Interesting question to ask on the existing donor side, because it can kind of maybe illuminate possible future retention rates from donors. It can also maybe uncover people who might have some negative feedback for you, some people who may need some additional stewardship. And conversely, who are your most rabid fans, right? Who are the people that really love you, they're going to donate again, they want to donate again. You can kind of start to separate your donors into cohorts of people that you might want to communicate to differently. Very powerful. And then on the first-time donor side, same kind of thing. You get that nice welcome email. This is the actual welcome email that I got when I started a monthly commitment to Charity Water, which I still do get that monthly. Not a lot, only $10, but I get some good stuff from them. So this nice welcome email, we can't wait to send you updates, kind of like the update I just showed you before. But I love, and I think this is such a good idea. And by the way, there are some really smart people who work at Charity Water. They don't do anything by accident. But on this nice welcome email, it's very early on. It's the very beginning of the relationship. We want to improve your experience. So tell us more about yourself in this quick survey. And again, it's a couple of questions, but it's more about the donor. Why are you passionate about clean water? What do you expect to hear from us? How do you participate in helping us, rid the world of dirty water and lack of access to clean water? So it's more about the donor versus the previous survey, which is kind of further into the relationship. It's more about what the organization is actually doing in terms of communicating. So kind of a nuanced difference there, but definitely makes sense for where in the life cycle of the relationship the donor is at with the nonprofit. Here's another example of a new member or a new donor survey. So this is a membership group. This is a World Wildlife Fund, of course. When someone signs up to be a member, kind of similar to being a monthly donor like we saw before, again, interesting questions that kind of ask more about who the donor is, what makes them tick. And it seems so obvious, right? We don't know these people. All we know about them is their mailing address and maybe their email address, how much they gave on that first gift. But I love what WWF does is, first of all, they say, hey, why did you choose to donate to us? Well, WWF is a leader. They have an excellent track record. I trust them to spend my money wisely. Really interesting choice there. And you can select as many as you want. You can also kind of write in what other responses are not represented there. And then the second question, I think, is really masterful for this type of organization. So WWF has kind of a wide service offering, right? They are a global conservation organization, so they touch on a lot of different things. They touch on animals and certain environments and different environments like the oceans and forests and rainforests and wetlands. So if you are an organization that has a wide service offering versus maybe someone that's just hyper-focused on like one disease or maybe one species of animal or whatever it is you do, you might want to ask that question, hey, what are you interested in specifically? Are you interested in Canadian wilderness, Canadian animals, the illegal wildlife trade, tropical rainforests, the impact of toxic chemicals? So there's lots of different things that this donor could be interested in. And when they get these answers, if someone says, you know what, I'm kind of a rainforest guy or gal, well, then they can send them specific information that relates to that level of interest rather than kind of, spraying and praying and sending all kinds of different things and waiting to see which one sticks. They can hone in early on in their relationship what is it that they really care about. Another question, how do you participate in conservation? I assume they ask this for the same reason. I like to go hiking, I like to go bird watching, I like to watch nature shows. So again, if they get that information, they can tailor those communications going forward. And then they get some additional demographic information and then some additional contact information if they don't already have it. So a lot of times as a side, we load up our donation forms with a ton of questions. And sometimes that is a barrier to that donation happening. Get the minimum information on the front end and then follow up with a survey that gets additional information. You've got the donation. Now you can be asking those additional questions. A lot of times I see all this stuff on the front end, and it's kind of overwhelming to the donor. It's like, this is too much. I just want to donate. I don't want to tell you my whole life story right now. But there's no reason that you can't ask for those things afterwards. But I would really focus on the question of why did you give today and why are you passionate about this cause, especially on the new donor or the new member side. Because the answers you get are going to be so, so powerful in helping you communicate to those donors going forward. And speaking of response rates, you're not going to get 100% response rates on these surveys. On the Boomerang side, we have a survey tool in our software, and we see 5 to 15% response rates. That's okay. That's normal. That's what for-profits are seeing on the for-profit side, on the business side. Don't get discouraged that you're not getting a ton of responses. But know that even those people that are not responding, I think most of them are still going to appreciate just being asked. And then the answers that you do get back from people are going to be so powerful in communicating differently to those people that do respond. Other kind of sneaky ways to employ donor surveys. This is kind of an interesting way to do it. This is the thank you page or the confirmation page on a website. After you fill out that donation form, you put in your credit card number, you hit donate, and then you are sent to this page, which again can capture additional information. So rather than putting this stuff on the donation form, put it afterwards. What prompted your gift today? Why do you support us? Why did you choose to give right now? Simple things that can get some potentially useful information when people fill out that form. So the thank you page on online gifts, the automatic email that comes out, and then maybe the kind of the nicer letter or maybe personal email that goes out after that automated gift as well. Lapsed donors, got to be really careful here. This is a sensitive group. This is one where you don't want to, kind of be hitting them up for money and making them feel bad, making them feel like deadbeats. Don't do that. Lead with gratitude, I think, is kind of my number one piece of advice here. If you're going to survey lapsed donors, if you're going to ask them why they stopped giving, what it would take for them to give again, make sure you start off by saying, thank you for being a donor, thank you for your gift. You've been able to make a lot of awesome things happen in terms of our cause and our program. I'm not a great copywriter, so don't write that down verbatim. But this is a really nice example. This is from Ontario Nature, and it was created by an awesome agency called Agents of Good. They're up in Toronto, Canada. If you just search for Agents of Good, Ontario Nature, lapsed letter, you'll find the whole letter. Before this is like 3 pages of just beautiful donor-centric storytelling. Hey, thanks so much for your previous giving. We've been able to do so many awesome things through your gifts. And then it ends with this survey. What would it take for you to come back? What would need to change? What's going on? And then what matters to you? We promise to listen to you and follow up with you if you want us to. So kind of figuring out, hey, what's going on in maybe the donor's life, and it can also kind of uncover, hey, did we do something wrong? Did we, kick you off? Did we make you feel bad? Did we miss the mark in our communication somehow? Are you going through financial difficulty? That could be all it is, honestly. Could be that they just forgot and they didn't even realize that they had lapsed. So kind of making it a little open-ended rather than maybe assuming what the reasons are, I think is a really useful thing to do in this case. And you'll also see this in kind of the conventional wisdom. This is another letter template. This is from Pamela Grow. My buddy, she's out in Philadelphia. She's one of your PANO people. She's awesome. She's got lots of templates on her website. But I love this letter that gives kind of a preamble to a lapsed donor survey. And she says it, lead with gratitude, short impact statements, because of you, we've been able to do all these great things. And then kind of asking, what went wrong? What can we do? Can you fill out this quick survey? Let us know how you feel. So that's a template you can use. I totally trust that template. Pamela is awesome. That can be a nice kind of preamble to maybe a survey like this that kind of asks, hey, what's going on? We miss you. What needs to change before you come back? Other sort of forms of surveys or ways to employ surveys. This is a survey template from the Donor Voice, and we saw their research up at the front end. These were the folks that did the donor loyalty research. They have this really interesting survey methodology, and you can read about it more here. I'll try to do it justice in about a minute or so. They recommend sending this survey as a way to kind of bubble up to the surface who your people are in your database that may be able to give more. People who really like you, but maybe kind of fly under the radar because maybe their amounts are kind of modest. Maybe they're only making 1 or 2 gifts a year, but they really like you. The people that give you 8s, 9s, and 10s on these 3 questions specifically. And Donor Voice is pretty adamant that you do not change these questions or the rating scale. What you do is put in your organization's name here. So I am a committed PANO donor. I feel a sense of loyalty to PANO, and PANO is my favorite charitable organization. And the people who give you 8s, 9s, and 10s, they found that they were able to predict increases, upgrades in revenue from those people. So this may be a way to kind of build perhaps your major gift pipeline or people that would be good to maybe send up a Quest marketing packet to perhaps. But this is a nice way to kind of illuminate who are your most rabid supporters, because sometimes it's hard to see that just looking at the numbers in our database. We see gift amounts and we see gift frequencies, and that's good. But if we can add in that affinity, are they really happy in addition to all that great information that we have about them versus maybe people who don't feel so good about us? Maybe we can also be proactive with these people. Maybe we can, call them up and say, hey, we're so sorry you feel that way. Is there anything we can do? You can also maybe not worry about them too much if they are lapsed and they haven't given and they only gave 1 gift and they gave through, a peer-to-peer campaign or a memorial gift. It's likely that you can probably, cut those people loose. So sending this survey specifically, I think, is something you could do maybe once a year. Honestly, all you have to do is change the organization name, Donor Care. They're awesome. They want people to use that. So check that one out as well. Okay, so what about kind of deciding how and when you're going to do this? So we've seen kind of what they look like and kind of what they would attempt to accomplish, but where and when should we deploy these surveys? There's not really a wrong answer per se. I think it's going to be different from everyone. I think this is something you can test for your own self. But one way to start, I think one kind of useful jumping off point is to, again, focus on those new donors specifically. How can we start to survey new donors? That's a really good constituency, a good cohort to survey. We saw the retention rates are low. We want to improve those retention rates. But the first thing I think you can do is document that communications plan. What are those new donors going to get from us in that first year, maybe even the first 3 months or 6 months of giving? So here's a template you can use if you don't have that documented plan. This is from Lori Jacobwit over at Ignited Fundraising. Awesome template. You'll find it on her website. She's great. And you can see that in addition to, thank you calls and thank you notes and a tour invitation and newsletters, we're going to slip in that survey in that first, 3 months, 0 to 3 months of support. And I think that makes a lot of sense. I think surveying early on, even for those new donors, is a really good thing to do because you don't know them. You don't know why they give. You don't know why they care about your cause. Great thing to do. I think even you could maybe slip that survey in even sooner if you wanted. But that's the beauty of having this plan, is you can move things around and mix and match and test different things and flip those columns. It's a great thing to do. But don't be afraid to add that survey in the mix. Know when it is those new donors are going to get the survey. Pamela Grow, we saw her letter template earlier. She's got a similar new donor plan, very similar to Lori's. She is a little bit more aggressive on the survey. She says within the first week. I know, and I think that could work for you, certainly. I don't think it's a bad thing as long as you've done a really good job of, maybe thanking that donor and maybe telling them some impact stories. I think a survey can be a good thing to do there. But it's getting to know the donor for that new donor, right? We don't know the donor. We don't know what makes them tick. It's a really good thing. And then maybe further on in the relationship, maybe, 11 months, 13 months, maybe we're asking them different questions. Hey, how well are we doing, communicating to you? How would you rate the things we've been sending you? There's lots of different things. Other ways you can automate those surveys, we looked at a couple of examples, the thank you page survey, the automatic email survey. You got to be a little careful here, though. If you're going to automate a survey, meaning it could go to any type of donor, it could go to a new donor, it could go to a long-term loyal donor, it could go to a monthly donor versus a one-time donor, you have to be a little bit more generic in your questions. You got to ask questions that could apply to every type of donor that you have. So if you do a survey that shows up on the thank you page after an online gift, I think a really good generic question is, hey, what prompted you to give today? Versus, why are you passionate about Alzheimer's? You don't want to ask that question to someone that's been giving to you for a long time and has already communicated that to you. You see the problem there? You don't want to tick that person off. So I think this question, and maybe even kind of auditing the technology side, how easy was it to donate? Those are a couple of really nice, good questions that you can automate and basically ask anyone. But then when it comes down to the non-automated communications, that's when you can be a little bit more specific in the questions you're asking. So if it's a new donor, hey, why do you care about this cause? Versus an existing donor, hey, how would you rate the communications we've been sending you? And you don't want to flip-flop those things because the new donor hasn't received anything from you. There hasn't been any communications. And conversely, that existing donor, they may have already told you why they care about your cause. So don't ask them again. So you kind of got to be a little careful here, right? This can sometimes be a little bit of a landmine. But if you're careful, if your data's clean, and if you are generic on those sort of automated sides, I think you'll be in good shape. So another example of that, we looked at this, is there's a generic thank you page. Why do you support us? I think that question actually could be a little bit more generic. I would be more comfortable with what prompted your gift today, because any type of donor can answer that question and it's going to apply to them. So be careful. I worry that a loyal donor, someone that's been giving for years and years and years, asking them this question, they may say, well, don't you already know that? I've been giving to you for a long time. I mean, come on, I've told you that already. So the more generic you are on the automated side, I think the better. And if you are sending those targeted welcome emails to, that data is clean, those people are new donors, hey, you're okay with a very specific survey. So just be a little careful there in what you do. It just boils down to, does this make sense? Are we asking the right questions to the right people? Other places, we talked about these at the beginning. If you're sending a follow-up email after an event, if you have a gala, if you have a golf tournament, or if you have a walk or a run, a simple survey to attendees, that's a great idea. I think that if you're doing surveys, you're probably already doing that one. Sometimes it just happens through our technology without even us knowing. I think Eventbrite automatically does that, which is nice for us. Hey, what do you think of the event? Did you have fun? What could we change for next year? Don't worry if you get a couple of weird answers, someone saying something that, I didn't like the tablecloth colors or, something like that. Still respond to people, we appreciate your feedback. We'll consider those things next year. But you may get some good information. You may get something like, the wheelchair access wasn't very good, maybe things you just haven't thought of. The air conditioning was too cold. The chairs were uncomfortable. The chicken was too rubbery. Probably everyone's going to say that about the rubber chicken. But those kinds of things can be really useful for planning next year. I put on events. We live and die by that feedback. It's great. Same with volunteers. I think maybe asking was the experience kind of aligned with your expectations? Did we do a good job of, setting the stage and training you or orienting you on that first day really good? And then monthly donors, I think, are an interesting constituency. There's high retention rates. They really like you. Those are super loyal donors. Making sure they're happy, I think, is a really good thing to do because those people are primed for upgrades, for additional one-time gifts, and things like bequests. They are really likely, much more likely, I should say, than annual donors to leave you bequests, making sure that the things that are happening there are keeping them happy. But, there's lots of other people, we could write in lots of other constituencies. You can go as nuts as you want with segmenting, event, corporate sponsors, maybe even program and service recipients on your programming side. That could be interesting as well. But we'll keep it fundraising focused now. But there's really no limit. As many different constituencies as you have, you can do that. Other examples for you, these things don't have to be digital. They don't even have to be paper. You can perform the same kind of active surveying donors in person. You can do it over the phone. One way to do it, I think, is through tours. Tours are great for new donors. If you have a facility that can be toured, if that makes sense, if you're a school or an animal shelter or a park, hopefully you're already doing tours. This is a welcome kit that I got from an organization here in Indy a few years back. It's a private school. They're awesome. They help the inner city kids a lot through, basically free tuition. It's a world-class education. Awesome organization, and they sent me this thank you letter that does so many good things. We could talk about this letter for hours, honestly. But I love that there was a specific invitation to schedule a personal visit or a tour. And that makes so much sense for new donors because when you get a new donor in to see in person what you're doing, that's going to make a supporter for a long, long time. I mean, they're going to see and feel all the great things you do. But it's also an opportunity to ask them questions. You are naturally going to have small talk with these people, unless you're an incredibly boring or some kind of sociopathic person. You're probably going to be asking these questions like, hey, I'd love to learn more about you. What makes you tick? Why did you choose to donate to us? You can ask those survey questions in person when you've got them on site. You can also do these kinds of things over the phone, not necessarily surveying people by telephone, but calling them maybe to say thank you for their gift, and then naturally maybe making some small talk. Hey, Christina, thanks so much for donating to us. Hey, I noticed it was your first gift. Just wanted to introduce myself. I'm the ED here. I'm a board member here. Just wanted to thank you and, get to know you a little better. Can I answer any questions that you have? What was it that prompted your gift today? If you're making thank you phone calls, and there's a lot of research that says that thank you phone calls are good, I think in the natural course of the conversation, if you get them to pick up, you're going to be asking at least a couple of those questions. Why did you donate? Why do you care? What's your interest? So not only are you doing the great and impactful work of thanking the donor, you can also have that opportunity to be asking them some questions as well. So don't sleep on those in-person interactions. They can be just as powerful. Just be careful about segmenting those surveys, making sure you're asking the right people the right questions, because that can be more harmful to you than not surveying donors, honestly. So what about some other categories of questions? It seems like we've been covering a lot of ground. I got some other interesting ideas for you. Adrian Sargent, who is kind of the godfather of donor retention, he's a big believer in surveys as a mechanism to help your donor retention rates as well. And he kind of recommends 4 specific categories of questions, and you can kind of read his manifesto later on if you want to. Just click into the slides later on. But he likes these 4 specific question types, and we've kind of touched on most of them already, but I kind of want to dive into them specifically. We got satisfaction, trust, commitment, and intimacy. So kind of nuanced differences here, but very useful sets of questions. And they also kind of align with different points of the donor relationship. So satisfaction, we've talked about, we've shown you examples. Were you thanked appropriately? How would you rate the newsletter we've been doing? How would you rate the communication? Seen those questions before. Donor satisfaction, really important, making sure that our efforts are kind of aligned with expectations and with the feelings of the donor. So satisfaction questions are great. Trust is kind of another interesting category. We've seen this touched on a little on the examples, but I want to kind of hammer it home. This is kind of how the donor feels about the programs and the services, the offerings of the nonprofit. Are they doing what's right? Are they delivering on the promises for the people it serves? This can kind of audit, hey, are we communicating all the good work that we're doing well enough? Do they feel like that we're doing really good things for your gift? So those trust questions, I think, are really important. Commitment. How committed are they to the cause and to the organization's work? So, I'm really passionate about saving the Pennsylvania forest versus just kind of a passing interest. I saw something on Facebook. It was a peer-to-peer campaign. I just kind of donated on a whim versus someone who is going to get out there and volunteer and hike and really experience what's going on there. And then we have intimacy. So this is kind of how the donor feels about maybe your brand, not as much what it is that the organization does or the cause. But, people have a lot of loyalty to brands, right? You see stickers on laptops and bumper stickers and water bottle stickers, people wearing T-shirts of brands they support, things like that. This is where you can maybe touch on how they feel from that standpoint. Are they going to wear a PANO T-shirt? Are they going to put a charity water sticker on their water bottle? That kind of level of commitment can really be useful. So those are kind of the main 4 categories that Adrian recommends, and we also kind of subscribe to that philosophy. We have surveying built into Bloomerang. You can send surveys really easily through Bloomerang. Don't need Bloomerang to do this, but we kind of make it easy for folks. We're asking questions among those categories. Will we thanked appropriately? Will we treated well as a new donor? I trust that you're delivering the right kinds of outcomes. We love that. You can get some scores here. And if you're not using Bloomerang, you can still kind of collate that data and kind of see how you're doing on each category if you do break your questions up into categories. We've got some high intimacy scores, but the trust scores are a little bit lower. Maybe we need to make an adjustment there. Maybe we do need to do something separate there. Or conversely, we've got some high trust scores, but the satisfaction scores are low. Maybe we aren't thanking people fast enough. Maybe we aren't sending the right kinds of things. maybe we're over-soliciting, maybe we're under-soliciting. So when you start to look at that data on how well you're doing, you can really start to make some tangible choices there and kind of adjust your efforts. Last donor questions, if you're asking people why they stop giving, what are the top reasons? Are the top reasons that maybe we're over-soliciting? Luckily, this is the bottom reason. I'm really happy for this customer. But that's not the top reason. Was there a mistake with my bank? My personal life priorities have changed. You can kind of see, okay, some of these things are not controllable by us. We don't have to worry as much. But, oh, geez, we're pressuring people into giving is what we're hearing. We need to make some changes there. So surveying is so actionable. That's why I love it so much. So much of what we do is not actionable. We're kind of relying on our gut, and that's okay. There's a lot to be said for that. But when you're getting hard data back from people, you can at least change things for those people specifically. I'm not saying you need to change everything for everyone because these people may be outliers for sure. But you can definitely change it for that one person, that group of people who's saying the same thing. So yeah, we kind of talk about this, just track those changes over time, be looking at those responses, and not being afraid to adjust your efforts if that's needed. Because sometimes we kind of get stuck in the same way of doing things. We've always done things that way. It's kind of a common refrain that I hear a lot. But this can give maybe your board or your leadership some good justification for wanting to do something differently, especially on the event side. Sometimes we get stuck in a rut on events. We have that annual gala. Everyone hates putting it on. We want to cancel it, but we just don't seem to have the guts to cancel it. Well, if we had some hard data on how people feel about it, maybe we could make some changes there and feel better about it. But I digress. There's so many things you can do with the data. I love it. Other interesting data to kind of back up the fact that donors like it when you ask them these questions. DonorCentric touches on these things in their annual report. Kind of an interesting little tidbit in their report is that donors who complain are retained more than donors who do not complain. Isn't that interesting? And I think that speaks to what I said up front, is that donors are passionate about the nonprofits they donate to. So, of course, they're going to provide that feedback. And then if you can resolve those complaints and if you can resolve them quickly, those retention rates just really skyrocket. You really make a friend for life. When you can not only receive feedback and solicit that feedback, but when you can actually maybe change or at least respond to that person and say, hey, we really appreciate your opinion. We're going to look into that. And if you can go back to them and say, you know what, we changed that based on your feedback. Thank you so much. We want to improve. And we think we made a big improvement. That's going to really make a donor feel good and feel like they're part of the cause, like they are right there in the fight with you, like we saw in the research. So don't be afraid. If maybe your board or leadership is resistant to all of these things, I would show them this slide. I think it's really powerful. They're already having these feelings about you. You might as well uncover it and try to resolve it if you can. Why not, right? Lapsed donors, again, I would kind of look at people who haven't given in 2 years. You can go off of 365 days. That's totally cool. There are lots of things you can do in addition to surveying those donors. But don't be afraid to survey those people and maybe find out, did we do something wrong? Did something change in your personal life? We care about you. We miss you. You're probably already doing an annual NCOA to make sure that your addresses are up to date. Maybe you're also even doing disease suppression, finding out if people in your database have passed away. So when you do all of these things and really kind of invest in your lapsed donors, I think that you can stem that tide of that lapsed donor recapture rate of only 4%. If you can raise this to 7%, 10%, that's a lot of money, and that's also some saved money in the form of, missed postage or undelivered mail. There are a lot of good things. So don't sleep on lapsed donors. Don't just kind of, write them off or delete them out of your database or delete them out of your spreadsheets. I know that's kind of self-serving because Boomerang and all the other vendors, you hear that from us, because we typically price by the amount of people that you have in the database, but it's not self-serving, I promise. We don't want you to write these people off because some can come back, especially if you are proactive and do some things with those people. But if it's gone 2 years or more and they haven't responded to those things and maybe you found out they moved or you found out they died, you can rest assured that you can remove them and exit them out of your database. But be proactive first. Spend a little bit of time. It's kind of my sermon on the last donor side. Things you can ask those last donors, if you want to do a nice letter that thanks them and explains the past impact, and then say, hey, we miss you. Did we do something wrong? If one of these things applies to you, let us know. And do a checkbox where people can maybe check one or multiple things that apply to them. I wasn't thanked very well. The service provided to me or the communications to me were poor. You know what? This is just not a cause I'm passionate about. You may get this question a lot from first-time donors who lapse because, they just weren't super passionate about the cause to begin with. They maybe just saw something in passing and, didn't actually care that much. They just kind of were compelled in the moment, perhaps. Are we telling the right kinds of impact stories? Are we over-soliciting? Be careful with this one. This one is one that I think a lot of people will self-select into. There's a lot of data out there that suggests that we do not solicit people enough. So be careful with that one a little bit. I think that may give you some maybe data that might actually harm you more than it helps you. But I think the questions above here are universally useful for lapsed donors for sure. Other pieces of advice, just as we kind of wrap up here, always donor-centered. We miss you. Thank you so much for your previous support. You did so many awesome things through your gift. Make sure it's not about the organization. We can't provide the services without your help. I would avoid kind of language that starts with we and I words. Focus on you words. You're the hero. You did so much in your previous giving. The jargon, I think that applies to all communications, not just surveys for sure. Open-ended questions kind of at the end. Is there anything else that you would like to communicate to us? I think it's a nice thing to have in any survey, just in case you are not providing, drop-down menus that cover every possibility or, multiple selections they can select. And make sure that you sort of preface everything that, hey, we're asking you these questions because we want to provide better service to you. We want to improve. So to help us improve the communications, would you be willing to answer this 3-question survey? Don't say, hey, we want more information about you because it'll help us raise more money. That's kind of the reason we're doing it, but you don't have to say that. And I think that a lot of times we are surveying donors to help improve their experience. That should be job number 1 for sure. Be careful as you are crafting these questions. I really would recommend that you look through these slides for guidance on those questions. Writing survey questions is kind of an art and a science. It's not something that just an untrained person can just jump right into. A bad survey is a lot worse than no survey. A lot worse. Because if you're asking leading questions or if you're asking questions that don't make sense for the recipient, that's going to do more damage in not only on the recipient side, but if you're getting bad data back and if you make changes based on that bad data, especially if things are already going pretty well for you, that would worry me. So, don't be afraid to either look to people that are trained and have done this. Don't be afraid to maybe hire someone to help you with this. If you're a fundraising consultant, says that they can do donor surveys in addition to like a laundry list of other things, I would be a little wary of that. You know, you might want to focus on someone who specifically focuses on surveying, and those people are out there. You know, there are consultants that just focus on that. You know, people who do focus groups, agencies who do focus groups, you know, all the time. They understand the science of those things. If you use Boomerang, you know, a little bit of a sales pitch. We have already taken, you know, we've already gone through that process and put in the questions that we know are really useful and that won't hurt you in terms of the answers. So, you know, and we've published all that. You know, we've given away all those questions. We give them away on our website. They're on our resources section, so you don't actually even really need to use Boomerang to adhere to our methodology, which is totally cool. That's fine. So some final thoughts before we wrap up here. We've probably got about maybe 15 minutes for questions if you guys want to hang out, if you're not too hungry already. I'm getting a little hungry myself. It's noon here in Indy. That's okay. I love talking about this. Segmentation, critical to the survey being successful, don't just send a donor survey to everyone on your list. I think that's not going to be super useful. I would break it up at least into brand new donors. You know, they've given one gift only versus people that have been giving for maybe a couple of years or more. If you segment nothing else besides that, you're going to be in good shape compared to most people who aren't doing that. And then the other thing is, you know, do something with this data. You're going to go through all the trouble. It's not too much trouble, but it is some work. And I know you're all really busy, and there's a billion things you're trying to get done. And this is just another thing I'm recommending. I get it. But if you're going to do this, do something with the data. If someone, you know, says they're your favorite charity and they love you and they've only been given, you know, $20 a year, I would make a note on their profile, like, these people love us. They've been giving for 10 years. They don't give a lot, and they don't really make it onto our major donor report that we run every month or whatever, but maybe we should consider sending this person some bequest marketing, or maybe inviting them to be a table captain or something like that. I mean, there's so much you can do with the data that you get back, but don't be afraid and take the time. I think is the most important thing, to actually do something with the data, because you don't want to just get all this great information and not do anything with it. So be encouraged. I want you to feel like that this is something that is attainable for you, you know, doable, and it will give you some really good stuff. Keep drawing a smiley face. I'm kind of smiling today. So that about wraps up kind of the formal presentation that I have for you. We've got some really good stuff on our resources page. We've got some more templates. We've got all of the questions that we have recommended, and even more questions. I'm going to kind of chat these links here and here. If you go to this link, our template page, you will find lots of sample questions you can ask. Questions are kind of vetted questions that won't get you into trouble. Christina mentioned it before, but we have our own webinar series here at Boomerang. I do kind of what Christina's doing today. I bring on guest speakers, totally free webinars. We do one every single Thursday throughout the year. Check that out. We can keep the conversation going. You only have to hear me for like 5 minutes instead of an hour and a half on those webinars. And then if you are interested in looking at Boomerang, you can look at our video demo. It's about a half hour long. It'll give you a deep dive into our software and what we offer. And like Christina said, again, we do offer a special discount to PANO members. We offer 10% off your first year of Boomerang if you're a PANO member. And I'll even extend that to 15% if you let me know that you were on this webinar specifically. We had a special running last month, but I'll extend that to 15% for you if you were a listener. And even if you're watching the recording, just let me know. We'll give you that discount. No problem. We want you to use Boomerang. It's cool. We will get you the slides. I think you already got those if you registered before today. If you didn't get the slides, we will email those to you. I've also got an ebook version of this presentation. I think honestly it's better than the slides because it's kind of more prosaic. There's not as much bullet points. There's more examples in there. Check out that ebook. It was written by our product manager who designed the survey tool in Bloomerang and kind of, the methodology behind that. And you can even apply that to your own efforts, even if you're not using Bloomerang, so no worries there. So check that out. But yeah, we'll get you the recording, we'll get you the slides, and hopefully you can start doing some donor surveying, maybe even this month or this week if you're feeling really passionate about it. So I'm cool to hang out and answer questions. If any of you have questions, just jot them into that chat box that right there on the webinar. I'm totally cool to hang out for another 10 or 15 minutes or so. Christina, if you're still on the line, do you want to say anything to maybe kind of close this out? Anything you want these folks to know, maybe about PANO?
Sure, I am still here. I really enjoyed that. Thanks so much for the last almost 90 minutes, Stephen. I just was thinking something that's really sticking with me that you mentioned is not just using, traditional survey methods like a SurveyMonkey kind of tool.
Yeah.
Don't underestimate those phone calls. I'm just thinking back to an organization I used to work for, and my parents were very involved as donors, and I happened to be with them one day when they got a phone call from a board member just to say thank you. It was not a solicitation call with a thank you. It was simply a thanks for donating. We really enjoyed having you at our last event, and we hope to see you again soon. And it was one of those things that it made such an impression on my dad. And it was cool that I got to be there with him when the call came in. That was not, planned or anything. But it really does, speak volumes about how powerful these really simple follow-up methods can be.
It stands out. Isn't it sad that, a simple thank you voicemail or phone call is so rare that your dad was just, shocked by it? And, there's a couple charities that my family supports monthly, and once or twice a year we'll get a voicemail out of we're millennials, so we don't always pick up the phone. I know how it is, but a voicemail is just as good. In fact, I got one on my phone right now that's just hey, I'm a board member. You're a monthly donor. Just wanted to say thank you for your ongoing support, and let me know. It's just like what you said. Let me know if there's anything we can ever do or any questions, and it's so powerful. And the Penelope Burke research just hammers that home of how powerful that can be. There's hard data on what that can happen, what that can do. And if they do pick up the phone, you're gonna make small talk. I mean, it's gonna be hard not to do those things. And especially if it's a new donor, hey Christina, thanks for making your first gift. What's going on? How did you find us? Why are you passionate about the ospreys in northern Pennsylvania or whatever it is. I see some words there. But it's awesome. I mean, it's so powerful. And a handwritten note, the paper survey, that kind of tactile. If you send out a survey with a BRE, even on an appeal, if you send out an appeal with a BRE, I think there can be a couple questions on there as well. Maybe someone fills out the survey but doesn't donate and sends that back to you. That's powerful. That's way more powerful than an appeal that doesn't get answered at all. I mean, you have no idea what was going on. But if you add a couple survey questions in an appeal, I think that's really interesting. There's Sean Schreiner wrote a blog post about that. I'll try to dig it out for you folks, but about the power of a survey, a couple questions, 1 to 3 questions in an appeal specifically, and how that can be useful. So I'll try to dig that up for you folks. So you can Google just Sean Schreiner, surveys.
Awesome.
But yeah, there's a lot of sneaky good uses for these things. I think kind of cool.
And I think on the flip side of that, this is possibly one of the most frequently asked questions that we get at PANO is, how do I engage my board, especially in fundraising? And this is one really simple way that feels a lot less scary than having your board go out and make the ask, is to do some of this follow-up, where that's a lot less intimidating for the board member and possibly for the staff who may not feel like the board has been properly trained to make the ask in the first place. So
I'm glad you said that.
We always recommend this as a great way to get your board engaged in your work without having people, be a little bit scared off.
I kind of zoomed over this, and I'm glad you said that, Christina, because this is this is kind of a hallmark in Penelope Burke's research that comes out every year. She is a big believer in the power of exactly what you just said. Board members, we don't want to fundraise, like I'm too scared to ask for money, I don't know how to do that. But getting them involved in the thanking process is like such an ideal thing, because if they're a board member, they must be passionate about you. I mean, that would be kind of weird if you had an unpassionate board. I guess it happens. But, carve out a half an hour of every monthly meeting, at the end or at the beginning, and maybe call the new donors that month just to say thank you. And voicemails are just as good. So it's okay if you get the voicemail. My wife did this. She worked at a small shop here in Indy, and they would carve out time on every board meeting, like a half hour, like they would get pizza, and they would just call the new donors from that month. And they didn't have a super high gift volume, so that was doable for them in a short period of time. But it was like the most fun board, bonding experience also. There's that benefit to doing it. And again, if they pick up the phone and answer, like, you're going to make that small talk. And the new donors specifically. And Penelope found that if a board member does that, it increases their next gift size. So not only does it increase retention, but it increases the dollar amount of the next gift. And I think it's because they're a volunteer, they're unpaid, but they're also someone really passionate about the cause and the organization. And they may also even be like a bigwig in the community, right? I'm the CEO of, the hospital system here. Yeah. I'm also a board member of so-and-so charity. Not that they may not have name recognition necessarily, but if they say like their title perhaps, I think all of those things kind of coalesce into why the board member is so powerful to make those calls. So I honestly would ditch the fundraising side in favor of the thanking, especially if you're struggling on the fundraising side. Because honestly, board member, the role of the board is governance, and sometimes I think we rely on them maybe too much to raise money, although I certainly wouldn't discourage that flat out. But the thanking is such a good way to even orient them to the organization. So, yeah, I'm glad you highlighted that, because they can be really excellent people to kind of achieve these things that we've talked about. So get those board members involved. I love it.
Yeah, and actually the way that you just put it, I would say that is a pretty effective fundraising tactic in and of itself. That,
yes.
a lot of those, thank you phone calls do often generate larger gifts the next time around, or at least a sustained gift.
Absolutely. I love it. Well, I think we got some gears turning. If you guys don't have any other questions, I'm happy to answer questions by email. You can send me a tweet if you're on Twitter. We can keep the conversation going offline, no problem. But we'll get you all the slides and the recording. Christine and I will make that happen somehow. We'll figure it out. Cool. Any last words from you?
Just to thank you again, Stephen. I always love that you blend some of the, stats and factual information with stories and real life examples. I think that really speaks to me as a learner. So I'm hoping that worked for a lot of our other listeners too on the line.
Yeah, I try to keep it practical. But yeah, check out that ebook, because there's a lot of other templates, and check out our resources page as well. You'll find some other things that can kind of maybe spur some creativity. Lynn Wester, again, is always talking about surveys. She is a donor guru on Twitter. She's always sharing examples. Pamela Grove's blog, always sharing examples of surveys. Sophie sofii.org. They've got examples on that website as well. So you don't have to listen to me anymore. You can check out some other people and things they have been receiving and sharing as well. Love it. But thanks for having me.
Thanks so much, Stephen. Always a pleasure.
All right. Well, hopefully we'll see you at your event coming up, your big annual gathering.
Sounds great.
Come say hi. All right.
All right. Thanks so much, everybody.
See you guys later. See ya.